Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily, and I am so excited to talk to Daniel Purgatorio today, who is the director of the upcoming film Marshmallow, which is going to be hitting theaters on Friday, April 11th, and you from Hemlock Circle Productions. And a little bit about Daniel: he has written and directed films, shorts, music videos. One of my personal favorites you've done, actually, Daniel, I think is underappreciated, is Tales from the Black Freighter. Someone that could actually take the Watchmen segment that doesn't actually align with the rest of the thing, but it makes sense in the story. So I loved it. But
Amazing.
you've also provided visual effects for films like Gags the Clown, as well as The Stylist, which our former guest Jill Gavarzagan was at the helm for. So Daniel, just want to say thank you for being here, but also congratulations on your recent announcement for Best Director and Best Feature at this year's Panic Fest.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on and thanks for that. Yeah, it's great.
I'm sure you're basking in all the glory of just, the of people's reactions because they've been really positive. And I will come out with my bias and just say I loved it. Our review's up on the site, so that will show hopefully in my questions here. But the baseline one to get us started is just, what was your initial introduction to what was formerly Camp Spooky and now Marshmallow?
Yeah, so I met one of the producers, Warner from Hemlock, years ago with one of the shorts that I had done, and I was playing at a festival, and our short opened up for a feature that he produced. And after the film, we just hit it off. Myself, Warner, the director of the film, we just all hit it off and kept in touch. And I worked on a couple of his projects, doing some effects work over the years. And one day he contacted me and, we wanted to work together. And he's like, "Hey, I got a really great script. Do you want to check it out?" He's like, "I think it's in your world." Um, and so I said, "Yeah." So I read it with that original title on it. And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome." It just felt like something I would have loved to have had read and or seen when I was young. So yeah, I loved it. And I then had the opportunity to meet Andy, who wrote the script, who's just an amazing dude. And then we hit it off, and then we brought Todd, the other producer from Hemlock, on, and then we all just kind of talked about the vision, and I sort of gave my ideas of what I would want to bring to the table and how I would, produce the script. Um, and yeah, and then the rest is history.
That's amazing. And I can attest, yes, Andy is such an amazing dude. Had
Yeah,
a chance to speak with him when Black Friday came out, and I was like, wow, this is your first feature?
yeah,
Wow. So
yeah,
I'm going to be chatting with him hopefully tomorrow. I think we've got some time set up because it's always good to catch up. But, you mentioned when we were kind of exchanging messages back and forth before that you and Andy, you know, had kind of determined that the through line was that growing up is weird. That kind of became the through
yeah.
line. And I was curious to know, like, how does that reflect your own personal experience, either growing up and also kind of as an adult and living in this kind of crazy world we live in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, it's a very coming of age story from start to finish. And that was the theme that we all like really latched onto. And so for me, like I could relate to it because, all of us, nerds growing up have a hard time finding their place in the world. And even when you're an adult, you have a hard time finding your place in the world. Still dealing with that as we all are, right? As the climate changes, depending on what's going on outside. So we're always constantly pivoting and trying to like place ourselves. And so that was really, really important to me. But then, as an adult and as a father now, and I have, three boys, this film hit me on another level. So like while I could relate to it from the coming of age story and the growing up story, the second side of it, which I can't talk about,
Right.
was very emotional to me because it's something that I think about all the time. And I really, really loved the balance that Andy brought to the script. And I like it. And it's funny, the more that we talk, the more that he even realizes how personal of a script it was for him.
Hmm.
So it's great that I was able to read it and connect on a personal level. And I think that's what I was able to bring to this was, my perspective on his personal stuff with my personal stuff. And it seems that, with the early reviews that we're getting and the response that we're getting is that people are connecting on some level to that, which is really, really cool. It's always fun to watch a movie and leave like having had a good time, but it's different when you get to connect to a movie just beyond what the film is, you know. So
For
that's
sure.
really exciting for me to see.
Yeah, I think some of the movies that I grew up watching that were kind of intended to be the gateway horror films, like The Gate or Monster
Yep.
Squad, they kind of deal with these almost artificial Rockwellian kind of like
Yeah.
setups that don't feel like the world that I grew up in. And as someone who went to summer camp, it's like it's such a terrifying experience because you never really know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
And where you end up sleeping and who you end up being around most of the time can determine that experience. So
Yeah.
bringing that into the fray along with just the whole like how do I adjust to what's happening around me and how I'm changing as a person. But I just again, as I told you before, I think that the connection's there, but also just hits on so many different levels for so many different people because of
Yeah.
how we all grew up. And I I have what I feel confident saying is you probably have one of the best young casts I've seen in a horror film, and I can't remember when.
Yeah.
And how was it working with younger actors on this, and what lessons did you learn from them?
Yeah, outside of it being our film, I will agree with you. They are fantastic. Every one of them were amazing. It's funny because you read a script and you're like, yeah, this is great. Like, okay, we work it all out. We're going to do it. And then you take a minute. I'm like, oh shit. Like, this is a movie with all kids at night and there's a lot of like stunts and physical stuff. And you have that moment where you're like, oh no, like we've almost checked everything that is
Is this
difficult.
okay?
Yeah, for an independent film. But then right when we got into casting, like our casting director was great, and he, started sending casting stuff. And right when we saw everybody who's in the movie, like before we even watched it, we're like, oh, that's Morgan, that's Pilar, that's Dirk. Like we were able to like we knew, and then watching their performances and then getting to meet them, it just clicked. It really did. And I feel very, very lucky that I got to work with these kids. Um, and yeah, like I guess being a dad too, in some level helped, just being there with them. Like
Right.
I could relate to the kids. Like I still feel like I'm a 13-year-old kid. So I think there was a connection there on that level. And they also, all of their parents were lovely. And they were all there on set. So we got along behind camera really well. And then I think that all just translated and worked together. But I think the biggest thing I took away from it is, which every director will say, is find the people that are really good at what they do and let them do what they do.
Hmm.
And I wanted them to feel empowered and to feel like adults and to act like that in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I think that that creates a sort of magic that is very rare, you know?
For sure. And
Yeah.
I think like a good, a director kind of being the spearhead of a lot of these things for the vision, the best thing they can do is make space for the actors to act, for cinematographers to shoot, the gaffers to put the lights in. So
Yep.
totally agree that, not only did you find, I think, the right cast, but also they give truly authentic and believable performances, which for young actors can be hard, especially in horror, because you never know, how it's gonna resonate and how they show up. But on that note of like tone switching is also something that is like it's almost like you've got like a list of the most difficult things we could do in a horror movie. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
let's try and do them all. In this case, like tone switching can absolutely make or break a film. And
Yeah.
not many films can do it well, but you have somehow found a way to capture this immediacy from genuine adolescent drama to adolescent horror. I mean, the opening scene alone is just it's gut wrenching. And then it goes to like comedy and it's very fluid. So what do you, and I'm going to give you like some praise here, is like, what do you think you attributed to your ability to do that so well?
Um, I think it's all the pieces. Honestly, it like starts on the script, right? It's about the cast. It's about, people like our DP, Philippe, and second unit, Connor, like they found moments as well. And then our editor, Andy, like he found moments as he was putting together. It's all of the pieces. And then it's tied together by the music and the
Mhm.
sound design. And like I'm huge, huge, huge into music and sound design. And so the way that the edit was built and put together, Andy found a really good flow. We have two Andys, so
Yeah.
Andy the editor found a really good flow for the story. And then, we started to bring the music in to support and push moments, up and down. And then the sound design and the music sort of meshed together. And I think it's important that at least for this film, it feels like it's very ethereal, right? And you feel the movie,
Mhm.
like you feel like you're kind of pulled in. The more, especially the more you watch it, and I think that that really helps kind of balance all of that stuff uh, in a nice way. But again, I think everybody fired on all cylinders, and the good thing about a good writer is they know that the script is the foundation for everything, right? It's the blueprint for building the house. But when you start to get into it, things evolve and they grow, right? And so you find your actors and the script evolves, and then you find your shots and the script evolves. You find your location, the script, and everything just you have to sort of work in that way. Like there again, there's the blueprint, but everything grows. And then you find those special moments in every single person in front and behind the camera and let them, kind of mix together. And we just had a fucking great crew. Like it was a dream come true. Everybody was like fully in it, dedicated. They all jumped at every opportunity to do what it took. I feel so lucky to have been a part of this project.
Well, I mean, again, you've given so much praise to your cast and crew, and it's all deserved. But I think yourself also deserves some of that for ensuring that they can do that, right? Like we talked about the making space part, and um, I had this question about Nicholas Ehlers. I'm gonna just dive right in because it makes sense to do. Is like you've worked with him before on some of your previous films and shorts, and did you always have it in mind for this? And at the same time, what kind of direction did you give him, having worked with him so much? Did you give him any at all, even?
Yeah, yeah. Nick is so good. Like I love everything he does. And so early on, before we started filming, even with the editor, Andy, I pulled some references of stuff that I liked. I talked with Nick about stuff that I liked and really leaned into some things that had emotional connections for me, right? So and Nick and I were fully aligned. And when Andy started putting stuff together in the edit and was pulling some of the tracks and he found some really great stuff too, we're like, okay, this is the vibe. But early on, it was very much like, yeah, let's lean into the emotional connection of like Tangerine Dream and some of those older, like didn't want to get like throwback, we didn't want
Right.
to get like so throwback that it's like,
No
oh
needle
yeah,
drops.
yeah, yeah. So we wanted to make sure that it felt unique. And then Nick had a good foundation, but he just pushed it and he went all over. And we talked about like different themes for like when we see water, there's going to be this sort of instrumentation. When we see Morgan, there's going to be this sort of instrumentation. When it's a slasher, it's going to go to this. And we found those like five kind of like structures. And then we use that. I shouldn't say we, Nick used that to define and sort of work between all of it and to blend them all together. And as the movie goes on, all those earlier themes start to come back in distorted ways. So everything is full circle from the dialogue to the editorial to the sound design to the music. Um, yeah, which was really, really cool. But Nick, I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
It's stupid to say this because it's our film, but I listen to the music uh regularly, like a lot. Like I love it so much. It just enhanced the experience.
I forget the person's name. He goes by like one name, but it's like he did the Maniac remake score, and it
Oh,
really
yep.
reminded me. I think it's Guy or something like that. But
Yeah.
it reminded me of that and like a little bit of Le Matos, and also as you said, Tangerine Dream.
Yeah.
But there's this emotionality to it, and it does crescendo at these perfect moments with this distorted synth that really gets through. I think I mean, I hate the word elevating and horror and putting it next to horror because we often get it back on it, but it does elevate the tension
Yeah,
in ways
absolutely.
that, image can only do so much.
It's funny you
Um,
said that because both the original Maniac and the remake Maniac soundtracks were references that I looked at that originally I had passed over to Andy, the editor. So it's cool that you picked up on that.
I mean, they're great scores, so I mean,
Yeah.
it's easy to look at greatness and say, how can we apply it here?
Yeah.
And when you think about the production schedule and also kind of working and shooting outdoors, were there any specific challenges that you had to overcome? Because I know that sometimes weather and just things happen on site that you obviously can't predict. So anything that you can recall that was like, oh man, we really had a tough time to this, but I'm glad we got it through.
Yeah, so we shot for 18 days, so it was a fast shoot.
Yeah.
And the first day, it downpoured right before we were about to shoot. And it rained for like an hour, like poured, and then it stopped, and we got no rain for the rest of the shoot.
Wow.
And it was amazing. But the biggest challenge, I think, was because working with, a young cast, they could only
Mhm.
shoot a certain amount of hours a day, which is, one scheduling thing that you have to deal with. But then also they had to stop by like 10 o'clock at night on weekdays because they were still in school
Yeah.
while on location. And so like it got dark at 9:30 at night and they could shoot till 10. So there was
Wow.
a lot of like we gotta go, like move fast. And it was like every night was like a crazy like rush of getting stuff. And we had to jump around a lot between shooting interior night stuff and then shooting other scenes and then come back to finish the interior night. Like there was,
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. But everybody was really good, super on top of their game. Like the camera was put up and everything was ready to go. Actors were ready to go. Like it worked. I don't know how, but it worked.
I mean, that's the miracle of movie making, right? Is that like when you get the right people and the right pieces in place, like it does just kind of happen,
Yep.
almost like a organic reaction.
Yeah.
And as far as the pacing of the film, something that I see, it's kind of an unfortunate byproduct, I think, of just the nature of genre film is that it often has the dreaded second act lull where you're just like, oh, we know we have to get through this to the big ending, but
Yeah.
there's such tight pacing and tension through this. How did were there any things you had to do to kind of make that story move a little faster, or was it all kind of already in the script? How did you keep the pacing and the tension going?
Yeah, the scripts had a lot of stuff blocked out for sure. And then we made sure that when we were going in that there was always something that would help a moment, right? So it's like lead up and then something happens that will then motivate the next chunk and then something happens that motivates the next chunk. But early on, like we all had conversations because it was a unique script for a few reasons. The first reason was that it involved kids and the horror aspect, the slasher aspect. So kind of scary in some
Mhm.
ways because that can be, people may not like that or it may
Yeah.
not go well. And then we knew that there was three very unique stories in it, right? There's the first act, second act, and third act. And you have to commit to the first act to get to the second part to make that fulfilling, and you have to commit in that to make the third act fulfilling. So that was a challenge in itself. Um, but it was something that we all felt strong about. And, yeah, again, I think a lot of movies nowadays with the bigger films and the action films and all of that stuff, you get in and you're like hit and it moves really fast. And that's exciting for, lots of stuff. But for this, it's you have to learn who the characters are
Yeah.
and you have to go on a little bit of a journey to feel rewarded. And I think that between the performances and how the edit plays out in the music and sound design, I think all of that stuff kind of helps pull you through. So you get immersed into it and it's not a drag, you
Yeah.
know? Um, but that's, every great movie that we've all watched is all about build up and making sure that you're invested in all of these pieces. So when you're doing twists and turns, it's rewarding. Otherwise, it's just cheap, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially with the introduction of the kids, we get to know them so fast, so quickly, but you feel like you've known them for a long time. And so I
Yeah.
think what stood out so much for me watching is that there is that element of we feel like we've known them for a long enough period of time where we are comfortable with them
Yep.
getting into the situation they get into. And my last question for you is a bit of a fun one, but often it's been difficult. So I hope it's not too challenging for you. Is that
Yep.
if you were asked to program a double feature, Marshmallow's one of the films. What film would you think would go up well with it? Whether it plays first or after, it doesn't matter. But what film do you think makes a good pairing?
Oh man, that's really tough. But like first reaction was to go into like the ET territory or something in that world.
Amblin.
Yeah, just because I that was a huge inspiration for me. And then part of me wants to say some horror stuff, but yeah, I would go probably like ET World or Goonies or something like that because I think there's just a satisfaction of watching badass kids go on an adventure and overcoming things that they shouldn't overcome because they're treated like adults and they get to act
Yeah.
like adults. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, E.T. was a big inspiration for me on this film in a lot of ways. Um, and it hits harder for me now as a parent.
I can
So
imagine.
yeah. It's funny, I was watching it not too long ago, and my wife like yelled from the other room. She's like, "Are you in there crying? It's been like an hour and a half, and you've been crying watching ET." I'm like, just hits it a whole
It
different level.
every time. I mean, something
Yeah,
about ET does pull on the heartstrings almost immediately.
yeah.
And my friend actually in high school, his younger sister was terrified of ET, and he actually he recreated that scene where ET hides in the stuffed animals.
Oh
She's now
yeah,
like traumatized, but even the scariest parts of ET, and I love that you picked ET because there's genuine fear and horror in ET, but
yeah.
then there's genuine heart
Heart.
and
Yep.
care and compassion. So wow.
And the fact that they find themselves and they find each other and they band together for something that they believe in so strongly is great. I saw that movie. My dad and mom took me to see that when I was little, when it was like re-released in the 80s. And I remember that whole scene in the cornfield scared the hell out of me.
Right.
But so I have like that sort of like old connection to it and a new connect, like two different things. And I think that that's what our movie tries to play on.
I think you succeeded there, and I think that's a wonderful pairing. And I just want to remind everyone that's watching this that you should absolutely go to the theaters and watch Marshmallow with the Crowd on April 11th. You can check your local listings. We'll put them in the description of the video and in the article. And Daniel, I just want to say again, this has been such a wonderful discussion. I'm really grateful for you making some time to do it, and I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing next.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, for watching the film and your kind words. And yeah, you said it, but independent movies, all independent movies, it's about word of mouth. So the more people talk about stuff, not just our film, but independent movies in general, the more that people talk about it and post about it and share it, the better it is, because then we get to keep making more, and hopefully other studios see it and just want to keep creating this content. So. Thank you so much. It really means a lot to all of us for checking out our movie.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And, we can always support with our dollars. That's the best way we can show our support with or without our dollars, but put the things where we actually care and matter. So, thanks again, Daniel, and looking forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.